Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort, and it is Friday, 6 a.m. Last night was a rough night of sleep. Our smoke alarms went off randomly at like 11 for some reason, and then Evie decided she needed to go out at like 12:30. So, it's one of those days, but that's fine. That's fine. And I was only able to play one more PBE game, so didn't get a lot here. But man, I gotta say, this is the first time in a while where I have had a lot of things I want to do and not enough time to do them. Like, really, just a lot of things I want to do. Um, that's an early car this morning. Um, so the things I want to do is obviously play PBE. That's pretty exciting. I've got the thing going on at my house on Saturday. That's pretty exciting. Donkey Kong has come out and is getting amazing reviews, which I knew it would, which is why I was excited for it. That Mario Odyssey team knows what the hell they're doing. And so that looks fun. And then, weirdly enough, Twitch gave me a copy of Shadow Labyrinth, which is a game that is right up my alley and I've been wanting to try. I hope it's good. If it's not good, that'll be sad because it just looks hilarious. To make a Metroidvania with like Pac-Man is so funny to me and so weird. So there's a lot of games I want to play. So yeah, I mean, that's how it works though, right? And there's a lot of things to do. But yeah, I might try to find some time to sneak and play Shadow Labyrinth. My Donkey Kong Country at least doesn't come till Tuesday, so I can't play that for a little bit. Because yes, I still buy physical. If you've seen my game shelf, but yeah, I don't know. Overall, it's a good time to be a gamer. Also, I gotta say, small little rant, but I absolutely despise the people who are like, game of the year people who are just like fighting over their game is better than their game and like. We got lots of good games this year. Can't we just be happy about that? Whether it be Expedition 33, which I know a lot of people love, or Death Stranding 2, which I haven't played yet, but a lot of people seem to like, or Donkey Kong, or whatever. Can't we just be like, these are all great games? It's like, I don't know, man. There's a certain breed of people on the internet, and I talked about it briefly yesterday, right, where it's like, they find the need to have a goalpost that hasn't been achieved and make fun of people who haven't achieved it or whatever. So I don't know. But yeah, TLDR, a lot of games to play. I'm excited. So, all right. Questions wise, there weren't a lot of questions. Reminder, if you're watching this and you want to ask a question, just hop on my Discord and post it and I'll answer. But there were a couple good ones. The first one is a common one, but still a good one. Day one of PBE, there were some bad bugs. There were some bugs of, hi bunny. Yeah. There were some bugs where it was like one of the augments never despawned, the bugs. And so anytime somebody played that Wraith augment, they had a board filled with bugs, lol bugs. Or the fact that the prismatic trait on Battle Academia was activating too early. And the question is, how do these even happen? How do bugs happen? Why do they happen? Shouldn't they have been caught? And the answer is somewhere in the middle, because in one way, yes, the obvious answer is they should have been caught, right? Like, absolutely. And so how do they happen is, kind of how yesterday I was saying how, a designer might do a third of a set or a big batch of augments or whatever, right? Sometimes that volume of content that we make people do on TFT is a lot, right? And, we give our team a lot of responsibilities, There's no half-assing it. There's no coasting. You don't get to spend a large amount of time on one thing. On TFT, you have to make a lot of things. And getting every single detail right on all of those things is challenging, right? And so conceptually, you might make an augment that spawns bugs. You might go in, You might test it, see that that bug spawns, and be like, okay, cool. And then you hurry on to the next thing. But you might not test every condition. You might not, think of every scenario. And in this case, the person testing it may have just been like, cool, I see the bug spawn. Good enough, move on, right? They don't test it over multiple combats, and they miss the bug, right? It's human error. It absolutely is human error, and it happens. And it's a side effect of us, if you're going to ask your team to make a ton of content, you can't be like, and I expect everything to be absolutely perfect all the time. Now, if it ships to players, that's bad. But, when you're doing that much stuff, an error is bound to happen. As long as it's easy to fix and quick to fix, not a big deal. Not a big deal. Other things might, other causes of this might be that something changed last minute. For example, with the Battle Academia Prismatic, if you guys saw my rundown, the rundown had said it was, have 17 full items equipped. And that was what had been tested for a while and been played with and was doing well, no problem. Well, sometime between my run, hello, hey, I'm not going to bother you. There goes the deer prancing. You see it? I don't know. You guys can't see it. Sometimes, between the rundown and when the PB went live, the team apparently decided that it needed to change. And now it's, equip items over a certain number of combats. And so because of that, they must have made that change pretty last minute. And in doing so, when you're making a bunch of changes last minute, getting ready for PvE, you miss a detail or it doesn't quite get tested properly, And so when they made that change, they must have missed it. And again, not a big deal if you can fix it quick, but this is the difference between, someone who's truly done a lot of this versus someone who might be rushing and trying to get it done. And again, some of you who are watching this are probably going, well, doesn't that mean they're bad at their job? And again, the answer is no. Making games is complicated, and thinking about every single aspect while implementing all the code and doing it perfectly is a lot. You're not going to do it right. Everyone's going to make a mistake at some point. All that really matters is how quickly can you fix that mistake and how impactful are they, right? So like in the example of the bug spawning, was it a bad bug for day one of PvE? Yeah, sure. Was it gone literally the next day? Yup. Did it ruin PvE? Nope. Funny enough, by the way, one of the designers on the team sent me the augment stats, and that augment averaged a 1.4, which might be the highest I think I've ever seen in our data Tableau sheets. So we got to have that laugh. But again, that's not that impactful. Now, let's say you make a bug that completely destroys PvE for a week. That's different. Or you make a bug that goes to live and ruins players' experiences for a long time and causes us to micropatch. That's a big problem, right? So, as long as the bug isn't that big a deal, mistakes will happen. It is what it is. No one gets in trouble for these bugs. That's not how it works. That's not how game development works. So, that's kind of how they happen. It's like, imagine building a house, and while you were building the house, oops, you forgot to put the glass in one of the bottom windows because you were in a rush to build the house. You can put the glass in, not a big deal. Now, again, some of you might be going, well, Mort, shouldn't you be holding your team to higher standards? No, absolutely not. The team already makes hundreds of augments, power-ups, champs, traits, and we do it every 4 months. I am so proud of how much my team makes. It's insane. I'm not sure there's teams out there that do more than this, especially with the people we have. I'm proud of that fact. And so again, if there's a couple bugs on the way, As long as they get fixed quick, not a problem. Now, again, this is me being a little honest, but does that mean, again, I don't hold any standards? No. In fact, I have definitely had conversations with my team where I'm like, how did you not catch this? Were you not thinking through this aspect? I'll give you an example. Actually, no, I won't. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but there are definitely times where my pet peeve is something gets implemented into the game and it ends up being not very fun, but it's the kind of thing that if you'd thought about beforehand, when you wrote it down on paper, you would have realized that's just not fun. If you think through how the behavior works in game, and that you still are like, but I'm going to implement it and put it in the game and then go, oh, shocker, it wasn't very fun. That's the stuff I hold my team to a pretty high standard on, because there are just certain patterns that are like, this isn't very good. You know what? No, I have an example, but I don't want to give it because, again, this is where, again, I don't throw anyone under the bus, right? Like, if somebody made that particular thing, I don't want them to feel bad. So I will talk to them and tell them, this thing should be better. That way they can improve. But I think that's pretty poor leadership to just be like, yep, this thing's bad. Especially when I'm not there to even have the conversation about it. So, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of how bugs happen. Does it suck? Yep. Do they get fixed quick? Yep. And like I said, you guys should be extra angry if, like, Monday or Tuesday you're still seeing pretty bad bugs, right? And by the way, here's the other thing. I know someone now is probably going, there were bugs in the last set that were there all set. The other question is, how impactful are the bugs? Some are bad and some are impactful. I'm not going to argue that. But others are like, in this incredibly rare scenario, if you do this thing you probably shouldn't be doing, it doesn't quite work right. Yeah, well, that's the problem with shipping that much content. There's going to be those niche cases, Now, again, the examples listed from PB are not niche. Those need to be fixed. But, so there you go. All right, this next question is a great question. Why does Riot mainly hire senior roles? If you look at the hiring website, it's almost all, maybe a couple mid-levels, mostly seniors and principals and directors and stuff like that. Why is that? How is anyone supposed to get started in this industry if that's the case? The problem is, a lot of people who are naive or young or think about this industry, the way they look at it is they're like, there is one boss and a bunch of grunts, and the grunts do the grunt work while the one boss orders things around. And so why wouldn't you hire a bunch of junior grunts? Makes sense. That's not really how it works. How it really works is you might have a director, and then you might have somebody who's in charge of augments, and they have to manage and make sure everything works there. And then you have someone who's in charge of each set. And then you have someone who's in charge of live team. And so you need people that can sort of command authority and run things by themselves with a high level of autonomy. And so let's say what happens is you have a team like TFT. It's been operating for 3 years. Everything's going good. And the person in charge of augments decides, I don't want to work at Riot anymore. I got to go home to family, or I got to do something else. Well, you need someone to replace them. And you need, augments have to keep happening. You got to hit the ground running. That's a loose dog. I hope it doesn't bother me. You have to hit the ground running. And so you can't really hire a fresh out of college person to be in charge of all your augments. Like, that's just not going to happen. You need a senior who hopefully has experience and can jump into the problem and get going. And so a lot of the times, especially for live service games, that is why you end up seeing a lot of senior roles. It's like, usually it's to replace somebody who was already doing the role and needs to hit the ground running which is tough for juniors to do. Now, let's think about a project in development. Like, let's say you were starting a brand new company and you wanted to make a brand new game. Well, similar thing. One of the challenges, like making a live service game, is a little bit easier. It's like, we know it's a set. We know we need to build champions. Here's the format. Let's build champions. No problem. But if you're making a brand new game, you're like, well, what does good look like? Especially if it's a genre that doesn't exist. Like, again, I don't want to use examples, but you're making a game, you're trying to prove what good looks like and things like that. So. Ooh, sorry. There was like a little squeaking from the light on here. I needed to turn that off. Anyway, so, the problem is juniors really struggle with ambiguous problem spaces. So if, you can't really just throw a junior and be like, can you discover what makes our game fun? That's another problem that's not really well equipped for juniors. So because of that, the needs of a lot of these brand new startups end up being, we need someone who's an expert in their space. Now, what I can also tell you is that there are a lot of people in this industry disguised as experts who aren't experts, who make hiring really hard. Because trust me, I have many examples of hiring somebody that you think should be really, really good at their job based on their resume. I'm thinking of one in particular at Nintendo. And then you hire them, and after 9 months, they accomplish nothing. It's challenging. So I don't know that hiring seniors is the way to go either. Now, you might be, again, your question is sort of like, well, then how does a junior get hired? Here's the way it should work optimally. And this is what I loved about Nintendo, at least, is that at Nintendo, we were a small design team. There were only like 5 or 6 of us. But at any given time, it was sort of like, it's been 4 years. Let's hire another junior. And so, like, for example, I was the junior. And then right after me, and I'd been trained up and I was doing good things, we hired Phil. And then Phil worked with us and stayed with us for a bit. And he's still there, as far as I know. And then a couple years later, we hired Chris. And then Chris is doing well. And Chris actually got to be the director of F-Zero 99. And so having this sort of like backlog of juniors that you're training up, I think is ideal. If I could snap my finger, I would love to have like 2 junior designers who were always working on live on TFT that you could train up, and every 2 years hire 2 more to build up a buffer. But headcount is expensive. And here's another one of those really, really dangerous corporate things that I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you, but whatever, I'm going to tell you. Let's say you have a junior employee who makes, I'm just going to put a fake number here, $70,000 a year. And again, I'm lowballing it here. We don't pay, like, it's a fake number, okay? And then you have a senior designer who makes $140,000 a year, right? Double that. A lot of you are probably going, well, you could get 2 juniors for the price of 1 senior. And that's a common misconception, because the reality is both the senior and the junior have similar costs to the company in terms of like equipment, benefits. If your company has, snacks out there, the snacks cost the same no matter how many people you have, right? The higher level the person is does not change those costs. So, all right. Another car. Very busy morning. The higher level the person is does not change those costs, right? Like seniors, so that you pay for their health insurance and stuff like that. That doesn't change. And so, in actuality, the cost between an employee and a senior employee isn't that different. Obviously, you do pay a little bit, but it's certainly not double. So then the question is, and again, these are fake numbers, but let's say the company costs to that employee are an additional $50,000. Again, fake numbers. I'm totally not using the real numbers here. So now it's 120 for a junior or 190 for a senior. And all of a sudden it starts to look a lot closer. And so then if you're someone in management going, how do I weigh the benefits of, what I can get for my money? It's like, the two juniors are a lot more expensive. They're going to require training. That training might also increase the cost. Because when a junior joins a team, like I said, and again, dumb example, but let's say the junior requires me to go train them for 40% of my time. All of a sudden, 40% of Mort's time is being lost to that. That's a cost you're paying, right? And this is how people in corporate have to think. It's like, how do I get the best bang for my buck in terms of our goal of making a game? And what is the most efficient way to do that? Now, again, there are trade-offs, right? So like, yes, you could argue that junior needs training, but at the same time, if that junior's good, they become a senior later, and the long-term investment becomes really good. Again, not to solo him out here, and thankfully he doesn't watch these, but, Kent is a great example of this, where Kent was hired as a junior, took a bit of my time to train up, but guess what? Now we have an all-star employee who does great work, leads his own team, and was worth it, So certainly the point of this isn't to say juniors are never worth it. They certainly are sometimes. But you asked why people don't hire juniors. This is why. They think of it like this. They think of it in terms like this. And going for that long-term investment is hard, especially if you've got someone down your back going, why haven't you shipped this thing? I want you to ship this thing in 6 months. Hurry, hurry, hurry. And so then that person goes, well, if I have to ship that thing in 6 months, I need the best people now. And the best people now probably aren't juniors out of college. So that's kind of why it's, not ideal, and not everyone thinks long term, right? Long term, every department should probably be, rotating in juniors every once in a while, training them up. But I've also seen my share of juniors that you hire, you get ramped up, and 2 years later, you realize, man, their potential was not there, and they end up leaving. And those are the most costly, because you invest all this training in them, you try to get them going, and then you get nothing out of it in return. And those are the type that end up really burning the opportunities. Because for every Kent or Julian or, some amazing junior that we hire that grows into an extremely high potential person that's awesome, there might be a person that didn't live up to that potential. So it's not 100% batting rate. It's a challenge. So hopefully this gives you some insight into how people like this think. Now you might be going, but Mort, are you one of those people? No. Like I said, I find juniors to be very good, because I believe that at least the way I think about design is a little different than a lot of other people. And if I hire a senior, trying to get them to think about design the way I do, a lot harder. But if I hire a Kent, and Kent goes, teach me, and I go, here's everything you need to know, and here's the way you need to think about it, I find them to be much more shapeable and learnable, which is great. So I personally like training juniors. Like I said, I trained Phil and Chris and Paul at Nintendo, and then at Riot, people like Kent. So I like doing stuff like that. But I at least understand the justification. So there you go. And again, if my comms people are later like, Mort, you said too much, sorry, my bad. All right, last question here. Do you think TFT would be better if we didn't have memory limitations and we could just add more champs to the game? The answer to this is probably not, but maybe there's a clever way you could do it. And the reason I say probably not is, we've been adding 1 or 2 champions to one cost, right? So one cost sometimes is 13 or 14, or 4 cost has slowly went from 11 to 12 to 13. So like we've been adding a couple, but every time you add them, what happens is it becomes harder to hit your 2 stars and 3 stars because the pool is wider. And I think we started to see this with 4 costs and we don't realize it, is that with 13 4 costs, playing a 4 cost line is hard. You do your level 8 roll down, it's hard to hit your 2-star 4 costs nowadays. It's really hard. And I think part of that happened when we escalated from 12 to 13. And so like if I could snap my fingers and let's say we're going to add 2 more to every cost, right? So now there's 2 more 1 costs, 2 more 2 costs, 2 more 3 costs. All of a sudden, these roll downs are going to be a lot more painful. You know, it's already hard enough to hit a 2-star 5 cost sometimes. Do I want you having to dig through the pool even more? Kind of skeptical of that. So I don't think it's just as easy as like plus 10 champs, 2 of each cost, game better. Now, there are some positives, right? With more champions means more permutations and more replayability, and that's good, or comp diversity. It certainly means more things to balance. So, you know, we'd have to do that, which I'm always up for the challenge of like, there's some more content to the game. Using set 15 as an example, that would be 10 more champions that we need to make sure the power-ups work for. And do some of those champions want exclusive power-ups? Maybe. You know, let's say we add, I don't know, I'm making up a random champion here. We add Rek'Sai. Does Rek'Sai want a special power-up that adds Burrow? Maybe. It might be fun, you know? And so I don't think it's just as simple as like more champs good, game better. I think there's a lot of drawbacks to doing that. So you would have to come up with a pretty clever system to do that. Now, some of you might go towards like, well, why don't you do it like Dota Underlord's jail system, where there's 2 more of each cost, but every game, 2 of each cost don't appear. And you get that like Hearthstone Battlegrounds or Dota Underlords thing. And after someone who's played both of those, because we have a lot of people in our game who, when they log in, like a lot of their experience is like, hey, I just watched my my favorite streamer, K3 Soju, play a comp, and he played a really cool Battle Academia board, and he won with it, and he was showboating and having fun with it, and I want to go do that too. So I want to log in, and I want to play some Battle Academia, just like favorite streamer Soju did. And then they log in, and the first game, it's like, oh, Battle Academia is not in this game. And then the second game they play, and it's like, oh, still not in there. Well, what the hell, man? I just wanted to log in and have my fun. Why you got to be like this? You know, I think we know through a lot of our player surveys that this is how a lot of people experience the game. Another example might be, I'm a huge Shaco fan. I love Shaco. Shaco's my favorite champion. They finally added him to TFT. So I'm going to make sure that every game I log in, I force Shaco. What do you mean Shaco's not in 30% of my games? Screw you, right? Like, not everyone wants that, like, variety. We have a large group of players that just want to play what they want to play. And so saying, hey, some of that content you just don't get right now feels really bad. I just don't agree with that system. I think it makes the game worse. I think a lot of our audience would really not enjoy it. So I think that would be really bad for the game. And so again, like, we need to find, if hypothetically we were like, we need to add more champions, we have to find a way that doesn't screw up the champion pool, but also need to all be available at the same time. And like I said, even adding 2 more of each champ, that's going to be a hard challenge. So overall, I think my answer is, would I do it if I could just snap my fingers? No, but who knows? Maybe there's a clever way to do that someday. I mean, again, we have been slowly adding 1 at a time, but like I said, I feel like right now we're at the limit. I think adding another 4 cost right now would be disastrous. Adding another 1 cost right now would be disastrous. I think adding a 5 cost we've never toyed with. It's been 8 the whole time. Could we add another 5 cost? Maybe. Or maybe, you know, something like the Isekai augment, where it's like echoes available for this one point of time. Stuff like that might be more acceptable. But what does that get you? Like 5 more champions? You're not adding 10 champion augments like that. And the augment system can only do so much of the heavy lifting. You don't need the augment system to constantly be just adding new mechanics all the time like this. Having a one-off is cool. 5 or 10 would make it a lot less special. So there you go. Those are the questions I had today. Now, I did see there was one more really good question added about like player conspiracy theories, so I hope to get to that one Monday. That question was added this morning and looked like a very good question to answer, so that looks fun. But yeah, there you go. For those of you who have been watching this ever since I made these public, appreciate you. Shows that there's an audience that wants to watch these kind of things and be hungry for that sort of adult conversations, which I'm really happy for. I'm happy that this exists. My hope is that content like this, even if the viewership is low, the people who enjoy it are being better for it and learning. And that makes me happy, because I swear to God, if I have to go to YouTube and see another Pirate Software is done video with 200,000 views because people are drama farming and can't stare away from a train wreck. Frickin' world, man. So the few thousand of you that watch this stuff, you are good peoples, and I like you. All right, like I said, I won't be streaming Like, here's my schedule. If I wake up very early Saturday, I can stream until like 9 a.m. Because the people are coming to my house at like 10. So it would be a short stream if I do it. Or I might just sleep in and be well rested. I don't know. And then the peoples are leaving Sunday morning. I don't know what time. Let's say they leave at like 9 or 10 a.m. After that, I might log on and stream. So you might have me at very weird times this weekend, but it will not be a normal streaming weekend. But I would love to get some PBE games in, and the weekend's going to be my best shot to do that. So we'll see. All right, hopefully you have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.